Okay, can I just second Susan saying what an excellent job Andrea's done, and I really want to say thank you to her. Where is she?
She's just popped out. She's trying to get the music down.
Oh, okay, fair enough. I'll explain to you while she's not here why I'm really grateful to her. It's because I had a short list of authors that I really, really wanted to interview, and Justina was the last one, and so here she is, and I'm getting to do it, and that's all thanks to Andrea. So, hooray! And a big thank you to Justina for coming along. Thank you very much. Okay, so I thought we might start the interview by talking perhaps about reading rather than about writing to begin with.
Okay.
So could we start maybe with childhood reading? What did you like to read as a child?
I would read anything fantastical or science fictional that was in the school library.
Okay.
And I picked it kind of at random, choosing from whatever was on the cover,
Okay.
hoping that it would turn out well.
Right.
And when people ask me this, I always remember particularly one book. It's called The Jargoon Pard. Has anyone ever heard of it?
Yes, Andre Norton. It was fab.
Andre Norton.
Thank you. I should have Googled it right, but every now and then it floats into my head. I see the cover,
And it's got all the
great.
And it's got all the colour magic.
Yes. That one of the standout books
Okay.
for me.
Okay.
And then the usual Alice in Wonderland and Tolkien and other things more common, I suppose, that people have heard of more often.
Okay. Okay. That's interesting. And so, how do you think your reading habits developed from there? Heading towards what do you read now? Do you have any time to read?
Very similar selection process, actually.
Right, okay.
But yeah, I keep an eye. Now I'm more kind of hoovering up people's little reviews and snippets on Twitter and Facebook and what people I know are reading and saying
Right.
about books. I think that looks interesting. I should read it.
Okay.
And what my friends write, obviously.
Yes. Yeah, that's something that I definitely recognise. And do you think your reading is influenced? I'm really interested in the effect of awards at the moment. So do you think that is an influence on what you decide to read?
I mean, if I see an awards list, do I think?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, or does it? Do you just? I mean, I don't suppose you look at the list and think I must read all of them. There are people who do that, but I'm not sure there's that many of us that have time. But do you sort of pick from those at all?
There's a part of me that reads the list and go, if I was educated properly, I should have read all of these, and I must, but I know that I won't.
Yes.
So, yes, it does influence. I do look at them and I read about them as much as I can because I like to know what's going on.
Yes.
And I will read them if they look like they're my kind of thing.
Right.
Or
Okay.
if somebody recommends it. So yes, it does have an effect actually.
Okay. Okay. That's interesting.
Definitely
Yeah.
a positive effect.
Yeah. Good. Okay. So kind of following on from that, when did you start writing?
When I was a kid,
Right.
quite small, 6.
Okay. And did that sort of continue? Did you take a break?
I think that the reason I went on with it was because it was one of the only things I did that got a lot of positive attention off both my parents.
Okay.
Because I managed to string sentences together and use long words, and they were all for that. And I realise now they were hoping it's just going to encourage me to be more academic, you know.
About everything.
Do more school, do more
right,
things.
okay.
But at the time I thought, oh, this is a good thing. So I was completely...
Okay, so you kept going right through school?
Yeah, on and off. I was always into the creative writing, English creative class and the literature, and that was my focus, yeah.
Okay.
And I guess actually all the way through school I kind of chose anything that had a good story in it, so I ended up doing Greek, and I went to a posh school, I ended up doing Greek and Latin, but I didn't do it because I wanted to study the languages. I did it because I wanted to read the myths and the books and stories.
Cool.
And you happen to be allowed to do that all day long if you're studying
Yes,
science.
absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, yes, Tony perked up considerably when you mentioned that. Yeah. Okay.
Yes, the ancient myths, heroes, let's read that.
Absolutely, yeah. Okay. So, your first published novel was Silver Screen.
Yeah.
Was that the first novel you'd written?
No. It was
How many?
About number 4.
Okay.
4.
Okay.
Proper made an effort to write it, finished it novels.
Yeah.
Number 4.
Have you ever gone back to the other 3?
I have used bits of them, but they have never... actually, Living Next Door to the God of Love, which was my actual 4th published novel, has elements of it and things that were in those original ones that you wouldn't really recognise.
Okay, so you kind of
You
punted
wouldn't
them
recognise
for
a pig in a
ideas
sausage and you
rather
wouldn't
than...
recognise them in that.
Yeah, okay, I see what you mean. Okay.
They were minced up
Yes.
and rehashed and made
Yeah,
into something
sure,
else.
sure. Okay, so that's one of the things I was going to ask you about is, do you have a sort of ideas file?
No.
You don't? Not even in your head?
No.
No, okay. Because I always think people... I can't... No, I don't, but people do, and it's really confusing
okay.
to me.
I used to, when I was very worried that I would not have enough ideas.
Right, okay. But now you've got too many?
No, I just kind of gave up on it because I realised I was never going back to them.
Right.
If it ended up in the file and it wasn't picked out or read or done something with pretty quickly,
Okay.
I never returned because I'd already moved off onto something.
Right. That's interesting.
So I gave up doing it.
Yeah, fair enough. I'm kind of glad not everybody does do that.
Now I'm sad because maybe
It sounds like a really nice thing and a really organised thing, but
it feels
yeah.
like an investment, like security. Always got some ideas.
Exactly. Yeah.
But it is
Yes.
security.
Okay. So, Silver Screen, how did that come about?
I've been trying to write fantasy novels before that, and my agent told me that they weren't really saleable in their form, and they were too ambitious, and I might be able to write them later when I was older, etc. And tactfully tried to say no, stop doing that, do something else. So I thought, oh, I had this science fiction idea that I've had for a year. I haven't done anything with it. Let's see if I can write that one.
Okay.
So that's how
So it was a conscious switch, kind of from fantasy to
yes,
to
very
science
much so.
fiction. Okay, but you already had an agent at that point.
I did. I'd had him for a while.
Okay.
The poor man.
Well, it paid off in the end. It was,
Yeah,
it was
eventually
worth
it
the
was
investment of its time. So, okay. So, Silver Screen is about an AI. And I'm just interested, because your background, your studies were in philosophy and linguistics. So, where did the interest in AI come from? Was that from your reading?
Yes, it was a combination of being exposed to lots of science fiction, Star Trek, Star Wars, and then doing a philosophy degree.
Okay.
And
yes.
the linguistics played into it very heavily, because at the time when I went there, computational linguistics was just coming into force, and things like logical semantics, which is basically the mathematics of language with all the words taken out, was something that kind of fascinated me.
Okay.
And I felt like it was all heading towards cognitive science,
Yes.
and what later became degrees in AI.
Yeah. Okay. So that was your
All
route
my interest
into,
was kind of going in
into
that
science. Yeah. Sure.
Bit by bit.
Okay. So that was obviously your agent was happier with that and
Yes.
managed to sell it.
Yeah.
So that was good. I suppose what I'd really like to do is move on from Silver Screen, because I was having a text conversation with Tanya about this interview and what questions I should ask.
Right.
And we both wanted to ask essentially the same question, which was, how did you write this really good book? But interestingly, it was about two different books. And mine is Mapamundi.
Okay. Okay.
I actually read that quite recently to prepare for this interview. I hadn't read it before. And it's basically a spy thriller with some science fiction in it. And what I love about it is it really does the spy thriller really well, because I'm a spy thriller fan, as well as a science fiction fan. And it's really important to me that if a science fiction author is going to write about spies, they need to do it really well. and I thought it was excellent. I really like it. But I'm curious about the science element of it, the Mapamundi. I can see the theme kind of running, now that you've talked to me about kind of cognitive science. I can see that that's the angle that you're looking at science from, and Mapamundi is very much like that. Did that come out of thinking about AI?
Yeah.
Okay.
Very much so. AI and also nanotechnology.
Right.
And
Do you want to briefly explain what Mapamundi is?
Mapamundi, right. It is. It's like you said, it's a spy thriller. Basically, Nanotechnology is, I decided it was going to be an acceptable form of medical treatment for people in certain circumstances. So you have these super tiny molecular sized machines which can be given simple tasks to do within the human body. Later research suggested this might not be such a fab idea,
Yes.
but at the time it was all the rage.
Seemed like a good idea at the
It seemed
time.
like it would be fine, not kill anyone straight off or anything. So, anyway, so I thought, what if, going back to the cognitive science thing, what if you could install these things inside people's brains and completely regulate the flow of the signaling in the brain by using them at every junction point? And you could not only regulate it, you could map it, so they could be there and not interfere, or they could shut the gate, open the gate, or change the strength of the connection, thereby changing your whole experience, your whole conscious experience, everything that was happening. Would this be a way of helping engineer people out of severe depressions and psychosis and things like that? So first of all, you could use it to discover what was happening with them, what was happening with a normal person, and then try adjusting things until their experience of life was more positive. And this is the kind of, at the outset, this is what the heroine scientist, protagonist scientist, is involved in doing. But she discovers, as her work progresses, that there's an element in this book I'm not entirely happy with, actually, which is the kind of the weird paranormal part of it.
Okay.
They accelerate somebody unwittingly. They are experimenting on people who have suffered severe brain damage, trying to see if they can restore them to function in order. And they give the treatment to this man. But there are some moles in the department who are sneaking around looking for this sort of black ops angle on things, who arrange for it to go slightly wrong, so that although he is restored initially, they continue adjusting him to try and maximise his potential. And this goes on, and eventually he becomes transmaterial, so he transubstantiates in the end. Every cell of his body becomes full of this stuff. Everything is communicating. And for a short while, he can materialise and dematerialise and do all kinds of strange things. But he's just an ordinary person, so basically, sadly, it's a very sad story for him. It kind of destroys him and he melts into the ether in the end. But that sort of cues the protagonist into discovering what's really going on, and then the CIA get involved, and it seems that there's a world race because they realise that they can use this technology to mind control people in any way they want, and that they can spread it through the cold virus. That was the other part of the science. And that they are working on doing that. But the race is between all the scientists who know what's going on. Whoever gets there first with this stuff is going to win, because they can make anyone think what they want them to think. So, and that's the story about the struggle for control of this initial startup technology.
Yeah. And if you haven't read it, I really, really recommend it. It's become one of my favourite books. So I was going to ask just a bit further about Mapamundi. So there's a lot of really complicated science going on. There's a lot of spying going on. It's kind of governmental and corporate spying, a mix of the two. And in the middle of this is Natalie, the scientist, who works on the Mapamundi project. And she lives in York. Wonder why that would be. Yeah. And it's rather lovely because I was reading about Natalie and Dan, her housemate, and in some ways there are some scenes which are really quite mundane, which are set in their house. They both work really hard. They don't have a lot of money. They don't have a lot of time. Dan manages to get into trouble anyway, and Natalie ends up in trouble as a result of her project. But there are times when they're just walking around in York, and I knew it was York before it said it was York, which was really lovely. So that's something I really enjoyed about the book.
I wanted to put York in because I felt like, these small British towns don't feature enough in science fiction thrillers.
Yeah.
It's always New York and Manhattan.
Yeah.
you know,
And,
Los Angeles, and you think,
thinking about it, there is no reason why there can't be a lab, a scientific nanobots in York.
Yeah, science parks in York.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I thought that was just really lovely, and the fact that it is a small British city is just nice, and it's not London. Much as I love London and I love people writing about London, it's sometimes nice to have things in other places. So yeah, okay. So after Mapamundi, you started writing about stuff. Which is the name of the universe, which is a lovely description. So, how does that relate to what's gone before, the science in
Stuff
those
was
two
kind
books?
of the next step, conceptually on from the mind control stuff that was going on, and the transmutational thing.
Yes.
Because I was thinking, I always loved books about ancient alien cultures which have all vanished but left only a few artifacts behind, which are mysteriously discovered, and then we don't know what's happened. I love those kind of things. So I was thinking, sometimes I seem to remember reading one of those stories in which the alien race had what's it called? Ascended? No. Sublimed. That's it. Sublimed. By becoming so technologically and spiritually and harmoniously sort of God's level, and they've gone to a better place, leaving us behind. I thought that would be great. Let's have something like that, because I just wanted that. Suppose they did that by uplifting themselves through a technology similar to this, but then they sort of became consumed by it at the same time. So the technology runs them; they don't run it. But when you become this kind of a thing, the system takes over, and it becomes like an ocean of potential personalities and memories, and you can kind of pop up out of it into consciousness and materiality, and then be consumed again.
Yeah.
And it's got its own agenda that it sort of generally likes to go about acquiring new things for the sake of novelty. And a kind of a it's a collector's obsession with having everything.
Sure. Okay. Did you always intend to write 2 novels in that universe?
No.
Okay.
No. The first one is natural history, which is where human beings who are developing themselves into transhuman forms discover stuff, which is that alien sublimed business, and unwittingly take it back to Earth, and then have to do something about that. And that story was quite different. The second one, which is Living Next Door to the God of Love, is all about the history of stuff, I suppose, and everything that's been consumed by it, and what's going to happen now that it's inevitable that the human race is going to be consumed by it. So, but basically, it's how do you retain your individuality when you're a member of a massive social controlling group? So.
Okay. So, at the end of Living Next Door to the God of Love, unity happens to the people whose story we've been following.
Right.
And it's a really good story, but what I almost found it disappointing, not disappointing because I knew it was coming, was that it was this massive ending for them.
Yeah.
There was no kind of...
it wasn't a personal ending.
Exactly. There could be no... There could be no fan fiction afterwards. I mean, that's not quite true, but it felt like these people were no longer going to be going around doing the things that they were doing because they'd kind of been consumed into unity.
Right, no.
Does it not work like that?
By the time I got to the end of that book, I realised that I was dealing with stuff which was pretty subtle conceptually and difficult to get across, and perhaps I've failed in that. So
perhaps I haven't read it properly.
No. Let me take the place.
Okay.
The thing that happens is there's unity, which is the stuff, and it's trying to acquire everyone.
Yeah.
And in that, you don't get an individual voice.
No.
You may be used as an agent, you may be employed to do something, you may be alive or not alive at any particular time, but you don't get a say. There's a kind of a horrible group mind thing, which is non-personal, which has the say. But it spawned, during this story, it spawned another instance of itself which does not conform, which that becomes the character July.
Okay, yes.
And it's constantly trying to re-assimilate him.
Yeah.
Because he's a danger to it, because Unity stuff is capable of warping matter and everything to its own. It causes a lot of problems when you've got two people warping lots of matter in universes. It's not good. So it's always trying to get him back. He doesn't want to go back because he says that you should remain individual and able to do whatever you want, even though he's got this godlike power. He's just an individual, full of flaws, fuck them.
And he goes around giving people what they want.
He's kind of forced to.
Yeah.
Because the other thing about it is that its nature is to give you what you want, so that you will assimilate it. So when he meets people, he meets them in the image of whoever they want most to meet. So, love story romance ensues. Anyway, in the end, he's always trying to escape stuff and deny it, but you can't. So he finally realises the only thing he can offer to the people or anybody else is that he can assimilate them.
Yes. Right,
and then tell them that they will be free, he'll never do anything to impede them. Or they can be assimilated by unity.
Okay.
In which they will have no say whether they happens to them.
Yeah, I think I had managed to misunderstand that.
Well, it's easy because in the art it's not easy to explain. Okay. Possibly didn't do that great a job of it. So that's
well, so I enjoyed it anyway. I liked the particularly Living Next Door to the World of Love.
I like it.
Yeah, it's okay. And now it's actually really interesting. Now that I know where it's come from, I understand the kind of progression of your thinking around the science. I read things in the wrong order, which is not always helpful. Okay, let's talk about quantum gravity because fun, fun and easier to write
a bit.
Okay.
Yeah, it was easier to write. Mostly, until it really got into the book through it, and then it started to get more complicated.
Yes, yeah. I mean, it's huge fun. It has rock star elves. How could it not be fun? But it is also immensely complicated.
Sorry.
No, that's a good thing. It's a good thing.
I feel I ought to apologise because I naturally complicate things. It just happens.
Yeah. I don't think that's necessarily bad. So my first question is, did you know how the series was going to finish when you started?
No.
Okay.
I knew how book one was going to finish.
Yes.
I didn't know what was going to come after that.
Right.
I knew that I was going to visit... My vague plan was that it involves different worlds, so I was just going to visit a different world in every book, and something unique to that world would happen there that would be part of the overarching plot.
And it does work like that.
Yeah.
But you didn't know what the...
No, I didn't know
what the
any
end
of the events would be.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Right.
I just sort of let it grow. So as time went on, you had one, then two together, then three. And then after that, really, you can't really introduce too much more at that point. You have to continue.
Sure.
So.
Okay. So, keeping it real, the first book does feel quite self-contained. So I can understand why. I can understand that you knew how that was going to end when you started. So, would you like to tell us a little bit about Lila, the heroine?
Yes, this happens. The whole of the quantum gravity universe is like our world, but different in that the Earth and the humans on it are only one of 7? Yes, 7 different parallel universes which have transferable portals that you can walk through, and this is because reality has been split. And you'll find out as you go through the books, I think by the end you do find out that this is down to a super collider event, anomaly, strange thing, kind of like the Flash, but bigger, where, the Flash gets made into the Flash. But in this one, the other worlds are basically made out of human imaginary things which have been exploded into material existence. So... And one, you've got Alfheim, which is the world of the elves and that kind of Nordic mythic thing going on. And then you have Demonio, which is the world of the demons and anything that's bad and nasty and weird and all that kind of stuff. And then you've got Fairyland, basically, which has a strange existence. Some of it's more material than others. Then there's, that's 1, 2, 3, the humans, no, that's the other one. 2, okay. Done. done that one. There's the machine world. You never get to see that because it's a shut. It's maths basically,
Right.
and ideas in the platonic form, so it can't be entered.
Okay. So
So
Lila can't go there.
But it does affect her because Lila is a human woman who she goes through to Alfheim on a mission. She's a secretary. She's going with the embassy. She thinks it's going to be great. It's going to be fine. She's going to have like a holiday there. She gets co-opted by somebody else into doing something very unwise, and they think she's a spy, so they kill her, try to kill her. They kill her companion and blast her into bits and send her body back in a bag as a warning not to do that kind of thing again. But then the humans use this machine element that they have been given by somebody. And I guess they didn't question too hard where that came from and whatever it was. Analyze this bit like, it's got some fabulous retro-engineering machinery, and I'm just trying to make it. They make her into a cyborg. But the cyborg, the nature of the machine stuff that she has is slowly, constantly eating into her and transforming her into something else.
Yes.
And as she goes through the adventures, she picks up other things. So she has the elf rock star boyfriend. She has, then she gets the demon boyfriend, and then she gets the fairy clothing, which is my favourite invention.
I love Tatterdemalion.
Tatterdemalion is a fairy which only manifests as clothing. It never says anything, it just is the clothing, and she has to wear it, and it will assist her sometimes, or not, depending on how it feels. So she ends up riding her fabulous motorbike in Victorian fustian, going like that, because the dress is just taking the mickey out of her.
Yeah.
Or, you know.
And actually, interestingly to me, when Lila is in Fairy, that's the most frightening.
Yeah,
I actually thought.
I enjoyed that.
Yeah. You enjoyed scary.
I enjoyed writing that. It was good.
It was.
Fairy is
also
so
very
much fun.
scary. Yeah.
That was how I really imagined Fairyland to be like.
Yes.
That was my
It's
take.
not
I got
pretty
to
little
write my
fairies in
take
the
on
garden,
it.
is it?
It was really so much fun.
No. You got any thoughts about where your ideas about fairies came from?
Oh yes. Apart from reading the original The Grimm's fairy tales and stuff when I was a child, the most influential person on me in that respect has been Robert Holdstock. I was completely changed when I read Mythago Wood and then Lavandis. I thought Lavandis was a work of art. I had never come across it. It hit me. I get the particular moment and the ideas and everything.
Okay.
When I read that book, I felt my mind go, like, bigger.
Okay.
Now we're thinking.
Yes.
And, it just felt like a deep insight into a very primal kind of truth about how human beings think and inherit stories, how they shape lives psychologically. And it wasn't until I'd read that book that my thinking about things like elves and fairies and stuff really consolidated. I started to understand them as features of the imagination, which are very powerful collectively and individually.
Sure. Kind of collective storytelling.
Yeah, that they have a deep importance.
Yes.
And they're like, they're gateways into big stuff.
Yes.
Internally.
Yeah.
I don't know how to describe it.
Yeah, no, and quite scary stuff as well.
Yes, you don't want to. It's true. You don't want to dabble with that stuff too much.
No.
If you're not one of the sanest people. You can really go down the rabbit hole.
Sure. Yeah. I thought it was very interesting that that Fairy was so frightening in comparison to Demonio, which is kind of middle management and aristocracy.
I've always felt evil to be very banal as it's presented.
Yes.
All the time. I think that's why it's like that.
Yeah. And demons living in condos with balconies and.
It was really, in my mind, it's like a kind of a modern Venice. It's very decadent, and everyone's just they're all trying to just outdo each other.
Costumes
how
very
bad
important,
they are,
isn't it?
and
Yeah.
they're just, complete pains. They're the kind of, you'd never want to be around them.
Yeah. But Lila is kind of forced to be there.
Trivial. But they're not really, I think they're just kind of, when left to their own devices, alone at home, that's what they're like.
Yes. Okay, so Lila is forced to go and live in Demonia for a while.
Yeah.
And I don't always like Lila. She's not always the most lovable character. But she's very stubborn. And she has character traits that get her through in all these worlds. And she seems to somehow particularly in Demonia, kind of adapt to their societal structure, and she ends up with 2 husbands, and then it turns out her first husband was already married, and so her relationships are very interesting, but I think they're most interesting when they're separate, actually.
Yeah.
When she's with either with Teasel or with Zal, that becomes. She also ends up at one point with an otherwise dead elf's consciousness in her.
Oh yeah. That's a recurring thing that I write all the time.
Okay.
Things in your head.
Right.
Dead things in this.
Yeah.
I've just realised that recently. It's like, it's the dead thing in your head again.
Yes.
Here we are.
Does it make you worry over these things?
Sometimes they're alive, but
Right. Yes. Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
So I thought that's such a fascinating concept in itself, but it becomes part of the story, not just in the way that Lila ends up with Taff in her head, but he helps her sometimes,
Yes.
and sometimes he really doesn't help her
I
either.
can't stand them.
No. So imagine being stuck in the head of someone you really hate. That's just such an interesting thing to explore, and the books really do that. So yeah, okay. So we've got polyamory, we've got rockstar elves, and political demons, and fairies that are made out of clothes, which are quite scary. And how about the? I'm interested in how you thought about the way you kind of wrapped up that series. How did that process work for you?
I had to decide in the last book, is this going to have a sad ending or a happy ending, basically? When we're going to do a tragedy, what are we going to say about all of this stuff? Is it possible to live together in harmony in any way, or is it just going to end up as a nightmare paradise where everyone... And I decided we were going to have a happy ending, so then I had to work very hard to get to that point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's quite a complicated read, actually.
It
that
is.
last
now
one.
I think back on it, I think they've got one of the main characters who he was killed in Fairyland. Is he in the last one? He comes back as Cloth.
Yes.
He's a cloth doll.
Yeah.
Which
is very weird. Yes.
Yeah. And he comes back to it in this long story.
Yes.
He gets turned into a doll, and he's stitched there by the fates, actually.
Yes.
Who sew him into it, and then he has to make this transition. He has to make this journey with the last fate, death, and I liked her a lot. She was so much fun. But that was a very much an obvious walking out of hell, don't look back moment.
Okay.
That was on the way to a happy ending. I had to bring him back. Can't just leave them dead.
No, apparently not. Okay. All right. So, kind of moving on from quantum gravity, can we talk about short stories?
Yeah.
So, you've published a book of short stories, Heliotrope. Are short stories your thing? Do you like doing them?
She said, I didn't say, yes, they're fantastic. No, they're not. I tend to only write them if I've been asked to write one, or if someone gives me an idea or a title. And then I can write one.
Okay, yeah.
But spontaneously, I don't think of them myself.
You would lean more towards a novel.
Yeah, I always kind of...
Okay. Yeah, sure. So I wanted to ask you, you contributed a novel to the When It Changed anthology with Jeff Ryman, which is the one where you paired up with a scientist.
Yeah.
Can you describe how that worked?
Well, the concept was writer, scientist delivers science, writer makes science into some story with, that you could read. That was the plan. So I met the scientist in question. God, what's his name? Gone right out of my head. I'm going to email him tomorrow, and I was kind of... I met him. He was so helpful. I'm just useless with him. It'll come to me.
University of Sussex, yes?
Yes.
Yeah. No,
we got talking. We were interested in the same thing at the time, which was I had just read about on the internet and couldn't believe that you could actually do home biological engineering as a hobby in the shed. I was like, no, you can't be serious. This is wrong. And there's no, buy kits, just buy it, buy the stuff. They order it, you bring it to your house, and off you go. So you know what you're doing. And so this is people can engineer substances, chemicals, drugs, and biological things. So I thought, what could we do? And we were meeting in Hebden Bridge because at the time that's where he was living and working nearby, and it was the nearest point where we could meet. Hebden Bridge is in Yorkshire, and it's known as the Muesli Belt because it's like a collection of the most. I don't mean this in a bad way. Lefty, right-on, vegetarian, hippie, all of that is it's like the gravity well for that is Hebden Bridge, and Hebden Bridge is also a very picturesque and beautiful old stone Yorkshire town. And when I go there, I was instantly thinking about Alan Bennett, and I couldn't stop. So I thought, I want to write something Alan Bennett-esque, sort of set in a Hebden Bridgey kind of place about home biological engineering. Can we do that? And he was like, oh yeah. So we discussed all of the things that we could do, and then I went away and wrote my story and came back and said, I'm not sure we can do that. But anyway.
So you explained to him about the fiction part of it.
Yeah, but then we bicker back and forth about what can happen, and it kind of comes out as it comes out.
Yes, and it actually brackets the stories in the book. One at the beginning and one at the end.
The scientist gets to write their part.
Yeah.
And then commentary.
And yes, it's actually a really interesting set of stories, but I really liked yours a lot. It's very good. Okay, moving on, the Transformers book. How did that happen?
I belong to an online group called SF Novelists, which there's millions of us on it, and it's just there for us to. There's two groups. One is where we go, woe is me, I can't write a book, and people go, there, dear, you'll get over it, never mind. That's one. The other one is purely business things that we talk to each other about to say, have you heard about this clause? Do you know about this tax accounting? But one of the things that came through on that was one of the writers in the United States says somebody's looking for someone to write a book about the Transformers. If anybody's interested in this, contact so-and-so. So I did.
Okay.
And then it went from there.
Was it
they
fun?
rang me up for a chat. And I was just really enthusiastic. And I thought, I love the Transformers. When I was a kid, I loved the Transformers. Was I an expert on the Transformers? No. I thought, do I have to know everything about them? This will be really awkward. But as it turns out, the person who was doing it was a book packager, which is a kind of an intermediary company that Hasbro had hired to completely create the book, and they're responsible for all of it. Hasbro was just going to give it its stamp of authority, and then it would be issued. So the editor didn't know all about the Transformers.
Okay.
So I managed to get past. So I thought, it'll be fine, I'll learn about it.
Yeah, right. So you did learn about it?
Oh,
was it fun?
That
Right.
was a learning curve.
Okay.
It was lovely. They flew me out to Hasbro in Rhode Island, and I went there for the day. We had a lovely time. I said, we've only got a day to sort everything out in this book. We want you to tell the history of the Transformers in the prime continuum. There's different continuums. And we also want to include, first of all, for the first time, never in the whole history of the world ever has this part of the story ever been revealed, so it's got to be really good. The original story of the creation of the Transformers and the original 13 Primes, isn't it? Which already exists in this fantastic Transformers Bible, which is a book, the original book. They brought it out. It's like it was in a church, so it's massive. It's half the size of this table, like yay thick, massive. And they didn't really want me to touch it. They kept hovering over me, and I was cleaning my hands and kind of. It was marvellous. It's got this fabulous binder with all this stuff in from right in the beginning, and things that they hadn't used. And there was also, thank God, somebody there whose job it had been to compile a history of that continuum of the Transformers.
Fantastic.
And he printed it out in 8-point on this massive sheet. And then we all got together and read through it and went through it and hashed out how this book was going to work and what was going to be in it, and the stories and everything like that.
Cool. So it was kind of a collaborative.
Yes, because it had to be authorised by the people. So I had the man who oversees all things out of Hasbro, and then the Transformers guy, and then me and the people from the book packaging who were doing the art and everything else. And it was a fabulous time. We had such a good time.
Yeah.
But it was really crazy. We would break down laughing at some points. It's like all these adults in this room very seriously going, but how can this millions of years have passed? And there was at one point, I think, I did some calculations and I said, I'm not sure about this, but I think this entire history line might just be longer than the history of the entire universe. Might we adjust the maths a bit to be on the safe side?
Right.
Because they really love their long ages and
Right.
transformers.
Yeah. And you added
It was
them all up and they were a
wonderful
bit too
writing
many.
it, but it was difficult at points because I thought, do you know, I have to try and make this let's just make it credible by really loving it and believing it and writing it as if you are the kid who wants to read.
Sure.
But of course, I'm an adult. It's for adults too, so we're going to make it a bit more authoritative and stuff. But yeah,
Okay.
it's good.
So if you got the chance to do something like that again, would you do it?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm angling. I want to write a daring do book for My Little Pony. If you don't know what that is, don't worry. Daring Do is the Lara Croft of the My Little Pony world, and she has her own set of novels coming out.
Fantastic. I'd read that.
They are.
Yeah. I'd read it if you wrote it.
Oh.
I'm not sure about otherwise. Okay. So the next thing you did after that was Glorious Angels.
Yes. Just for a change.
Yeah, a bit different. What happened? How did that one come
I
about?
was writing Glorious Angels before I did the
Oh, right,
Transformers.
okay.
I actually wrote the Transformers in the middle.
Right.
It was on a very strict timeline. I didn't have a choice.
Right.
It was 5 months from start to finish, done, dusted, and out. So
Okay.
it was that was quite intense. So I had to break to do that.
Yeah.
Which was actually quite good because it allowed more things to feed into Glorious Angels than had been before.
Any
So-
Transformers influence anywhere? Identifiably? No. Good. So, the science in Glorious Angels, how does that work?
Science. They don't know how the science works. They're kind of at the mercy of a few people who are capable of doing certain elements of science and engineering, but even they don't have any insight into how it actually works. I can tell you the background of this book, but it'll kind of spoil the plot. But I
No, we
feel
won't
like
spoil the plot.
Can't tell
Do you
you
think we
why.
should- we
It's
should not?
kind of
Just say there's a reason.
there's a reason.
Okay.
Send everybody out because
Most people perceive it as magical because they have no ability to grasp what's really going on. But the few people who are able to understand, and they can only understand part of it, don't see it that way. They understand what's going on, and they know it's either machines or some kind of technology, electricity.
Right. Yeah.
So,
Okay. Okay. And
but they cannot explain it to people who can't understand. If you can't understand it, it's like you could be talking to a monkey, or people. An engineer will come and talk to you to try to explain to you how your toaster works and properly works, and you just go. So I put the toast in, put the bread in, and that's it. Yeah, good. Everything else they said would just be like, you wouldn't be able to remember or understand. So that's kind of what's going on.
okay, so that's quite a change for you to write about science in that way because it seems to be quite well understood in most of your other work. Perhaps,
Yeah,
perhaps
one of
less
the
so in
reasons,
quantum
isn't
gravity, but yeah, that's just over there.
Yeah, I think that I felt that there's kind of a moment now where you can read popular science books and I can read them, and up to a point I understand.
Yes.
There's definitely a point beyond which I couldn't do it. If I was the only person left to know, I couldn't do it.
No.
We can talk about it philosophically, ethically,
Yes.
in terms.
Okay. So did you kind of set out to explore that border?
A little bit, but what I really wanted was that. So I knew that I had to write in the story that the people get their technology from the past. Everything they have comes from the past. It's a badly remembered past, and all their technology is discovered in archaeological sites that they're digging out of the ground. And part of it. This is because I read a book back in 1986. It's Paul Park's. There was a Paul Park book. I can't remember the title, which I read in combination with So you have to. That very well-known book. By that very well-known author. It's right there, but it's not coming out. It was about not just in the way that you're presented and how you look, but also in the way that you feel internally, the way you relate to the world is profoundly altered. I found it in my own life by your physical state of being at the time. So you know, if you're very fit and strong, life seems easy, you've got more confidence. It's very different to being weak and so part. Okay. And then I have this lifelong one of my things is the nature of consciousness. Going back to the AI thing, what is it and where is it? And I guess my original interest in that later shaded into how each of us becomes the person we're becoming, and personality. Does it? Are you more born with it? Is it inevitable? Is it destined to change by developing your insights? And how much of it can you control by force of will, and all that kind of stuff. So I've always been that kind of thing.
Okay.
And it's fascinating. And it kind of goes back to what I was saying about the fairy, the imagination, and your ability to imagine different characters and archetypes and stories. By imagining those things, you become subtly more capable of embodying what they're really about, whether you choose to do so or not. And you become more able of seeing these forces and these forces acting in other people, both in groups and as individuals. So it's a way of refining your perception, I think.
Yeah.
It's just a tool. I'm not saying it's real. It's a way of thinking about things which is very powerful and useful. And that's when I started thinking about that as I was reading Carlos Castaneda's books, which are very much about the same kind of thing.
Okay.
So I've got to the point now where it was very frustrating to me. The history of my family is starred, I'm sure this is true of many people's families and personal experience, with people who are very depressed and kind of crazy and driven mad by things, and disaster ensues, and religion was involved, and all kinds of things were involved. And whether I like it or not, I've felt kind of hell-bent on fixing it somehow. I have to fix it, I have to resolve it in myself.
Yeah.
What is this about? Why did it happen to those people?
Right.
Is there anything I can do to stop it happening to me? Am I part of it? Why do I fit into this whole history of things? And so all of the books I've written are very much part of that process of figuring out who's what, where did it come from, why have we done these things, what have we become? Is there a way of becoming more than this? Is there a way of escaping these things, or are we kind of bound to keep repeating? How individual are you, or are you just a repeating machine like a monkey that goes, I think, you know, you're more like that than you think, sadly.
Okay.
All of that kind of stuff.
Okay. Actually, that would be a really good place to stop. But I do want to talk to you about Switch,
Okay.
which you're working on now?
Yes, it's nearly finished. It's out in October.
Okay, so out this year?
Yes.
Excellent.
Yes.
Okay.
That is, it follows the theme.
It's amazing.
Of thing in your head.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a different. I thought it was a bit different. No, because it feels a bit different. I realise perhaps it's not quite that different, but it's a book about living in a totalitarian dictatorship environment where you individually are the lowest of the low. And the main character is in this situation, but what I enjoyed about writing, he does get part of his escape plan is that he's going to be able to gain the technology to interface with starships. So we're basically a long-haul trucker, but he's going to be able to get the hell out of this planet that he's going to, so he can go out and do other things with his life and not live in this kind of religious cult-oppressed hellhole that he's in. And he gets the opportunity, too good to be true, of course, of getting this technology. And it just turns out that somebody else happens to be sitting in the technology with an agenda of their own, just a few things to do before we leave. Like overthrow your society.
Okay.
So, and he's into that. But what I liked about him was that he doesn't let it get him down.
Oh.
He's like, everything's on him, piles on one thing after another, and it's just like, I do not care about this stuff. I don't buy that, and I don't buy that. You can say what you want, I know who I am, and I'm getting out of here. And it was refreshing to write somebody like that. I felt like it was a real change of... There's been, in the long history of the things that I've written, I feel that there's always a character in this kind of situation, sort of thing. Now, progressively, originally, they were a bit more victim-y, and a bit more where is me.
Right.
Lila Black embodied the struggle of the who am I, what am I angst thing. She did resolve it, but it was a long journey, not an easy one.
Sure.
He's like, that's not for me. It's just a waste of time. I know exactly what's going on. I'm getting out. It just obliterates things. It's funny. It was fun to write him. He's quite
Cool.
He swears a lot.
That's good.
I thought that might put people off. There's so much swearing in it. And at one point, the person who's taking him over, he has to go and pretend to be an Orthodox priest in this place as part of his cover of doing something to take his swearing away. That's one of the most tragic things that happens. It's like, God, I cannot think.
Okay.
Sorry. It's no, it was.
So
It was a weird story to write.
So that's out in October.
Yeah.
Have you got plans for what's next after that?
Yes. I'm just pitching that at the moment, so I can't
Okay,
say anything
fair enough.
about it.
Okay. All right. Well, I think that's probably enough for now. Does anyone have any questions?